Hello, it's me, Dr. Catherine Toomer. I hope you like my intro. It's something a little bit new. And today is a really auspicious day and a great day because I am live streaming to blackdoctor.org. And that is an incredible honor and one I take very, very seriously. And so I hope you will join me there, join me in all the places that I live stream. And I'm going to introduce myself because I'm sure there's some people watching right now who don't know who I am. I am Dr. Catherine Toomer. I'm a family medicine and community health physician. I am the founder of Total Weight Care Institute, and I am also the creator of Dr. Toomer Talks, which is a weekly live show to talk about anything health, wellness, and weight related. And essentially anything from, as we say, from the rooted to the tuta, from the cradle to the grave. So I really am family medicine. I encompass everything. So what I do is I help people maximize their health and wellness through weight care, through compassionate and complete weight care. And I also teach other physicians how to better help their patients through compassionate weight care as well. And so I'm going to say hello to some people who are here joining me. Thank you, Chris, for always coming. I'm not sure who No Chaser Real Talk is, but oh, Mona. Okay. Hi, Mona. Thank you for joining me. So what I wanted to talk about today was actually a pretty serious subject. It's imposter syndrome and how it affects our health. Now, for those of you who don't know me, who may know, I've done a TED Talk on imposter syndrome, and the title of my TED Talk is Imposter Syndrome by Any Other Name is Bravery, mainly because my take on imposter syndrome is that it is a self-imposed, self-described condition. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So imposter syndrome, where it came from, it actually started in 1978 to sociologists, Dr. Clance and Dr. Imes, who coined the phrase imposter phenomenon to talk about the effect of society had on people who were made to believe or were treated in a way to believe that what they had, they didn't deserve, that they had more than what they deserved, that position they were in, they didn't deserve. And so what happens, those feelings got internalized. Those microaggressions got internalized, and they created feelings within the person that made them feel inadequate or feel like they were an imposter, and that they were somehow a fraud, and where they were, what they had was all going to be snatched away from them by the powers that be, who would figure out the fact that they didn't really belong there. One of the things that is really important was that when it's a phenomenon, it is a societal issue that is imposed on people who are in marginalized groups. Over time, that name phenomenon got switched to a syndrome. Now, what a syndrome is a pathology. It's a disease state. And so what it did is it took something that was a societal issue and made it a pathology for the individual. And so it really internalized it even more, but it made it more dangerous, more of a problem for self-description. Now, it is a self-description. So the best way to say you don't have imposter syndrome is simply stop telling yourself you've got it. Now, the feelings we get as we develop, as we grow, as we become better people, we are going to get nervous. We're going to feel a little out of place. There are going to be times where we're going to be anxious and want to protect ourselves from new things. And that's normal. Those are normal feelings of growth. But somehow we've been told, or it's been implied that those feelings are because we don't belong where we are. But what happens when you have those feelings and you are anxious and you are nervous and they simply don't go away? So when someone has what they describe as imposter syndrome, either one of two things happen. They get used to where they are and then they grow out of it and then become comfortable where they are, or they self-sabotage and end up going someplace where they're more comfortable. The problem is that when you're in a situation where you feel uncomfortable for continuous amounts of time, it leads to chronic stress. Chronic stress is really a killer. And therefore, if you go from a situation where you're constantly telling yourself that you don't belong, that you're an imposter, what that does is actually creates physiological changes within your body. And those physiologic changes are hormonal. And what happens is that as we become stressed, because imagine the things we tell ourselves, we react to. Our body cannot tell the difference between a bully, if that bully is someone else or if it's ourselves. When we say things to ourselves, our body listens. And so what happens is hormones start being produced, cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and all of those things create issues within the body. Norepinephrine and epinephrine cause small blood vessels in our body to constrict. Now, when you think that your fingers, toes, eyes, kidneys, brain all have little micro vessels that are all being constricted, well, what happens when something gets restricted? Blood flow stops. And when blood flow stops, oxygen stops. And where oxygen stops, there's death. There's cell death. And so if this happens continuously over time, little cells, little bits of cells start dying because they're constantly being subjected to an environment where they're not getting enough oxygen, not getting enough nutrients because their blood vessels are being shut down because of the norepinephrine and epinephrine and cortisol in our system that's shutting them down. So when it's in your brain, it leads to dementia called microvascular dementia. When it's in your eyes, it leads to blindness, retinal problems, retinopathies. When it's in your tongue, you lose your sense of taste. When it's in your kidneys, you lose their function. They stop functioning like they're supposed to. Cortisol causes inflammation of the intestinal system. So if you have irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel syndrome, you can actually lose part of your intestines just from inflammation. So imagine if you have a situation where stress causes inflammation, it affects your digestion. We all know this just from getting nervous. And sometimes, you get a nervous stomach, butterflies in your stomach. Well, butterflies are kind of our body's way of saying that it's overreacting to something. Well, imagine if that happens all the time. So you end up with reflux. And reflux means acid in your stomach going to places it's not supposed to. Acid is corrosive. Acid will burn through metal. So imagine what it will do to soft tissue in the end of your esophagus, which is your feeding tube, essentially. Everything you swallow goes through your esophagus down into your stomach. So if acid comes back up where it's not supposed to, it causes constant irritation. And that constant irritation, again, starts affecting cells, killing cells, and those cells start to malform. And you can get a certain form of cancer from that. So you see how this is all connected. Our body systems are all connected, but our brain is one of those body systems. So what we think can affect what our body does. And what our body does can either help us or hurt us. So if we think bad things, things that cause us stress, situations that cause us stress, and it's chronic, then our body is under chronic stress and our body has chronic problems, and then those problems don't go away. Now, cortisol pushes the body towards diabetes. It causes all sorts of glucose dysregulation. So if you're not diabetic, it will push you towards insulin resistant. If you're insulin resistant, it will push you towards prediabetes. If you're pre-diabetic, it will push you towards diabetes. And if you're already diabetic, it will make that diabetes worse. Your blood sugars can go up just from being under stress. And the stress in and of itself will also make it so your body cannot do anything with that blood sugar, that glucose. So you see how it starts this vicious cycle of stress, hormone, body problems, stressing your body even more. And it just keeps going and going and going. And it all comes from a thought saying, I don't belong here. I don't deserve this. And that is what imposter syndrome is. So that is the connection between imposter syndrome and our health. Now, I said I was going to talk about weight gain, and it does, because what happens when cortisol levels are up, the stress hormone is up, our body goes into insulin resistance. Our body then pushes insulin, which is made in our body, a natural hormone, to help regulate blood sugar. Well, it goes shoot straight up. When our insulin levels are high, our body gets really efficient at making fat. It takes everything you eat and it wants to pull it right into fat cells. Your body either makes fuel or fat out of our food. So when our stress hormones are high, it goes towards fat. That is why when under stressful situations or any situation where your cortisol levels are up, you tend to build fat around the middle, under the chin, upper back. Those are where fat tends to develop the most. So if you tend to be someone who only gains weight through your middle, you've got a cortisol issue going on. So when cortisol is high, it causes insulin resistance. Insulin resistance causes weight gain. It makes our body really efficient at making fat. It makes our body crave carbohydrates, which makes our blood sugars go up again, which also make us crave fat. Makes us make fat, excuse me. So all of those things are a vicious cycle that happen from cortisol, stress, cortisol going up, the stress being caused by what we think, what we say to ourselves. Imposter syndrome is a self-imposed condition, pathology that we tell ourselves we have, and all we have to do is stop telling ourselves we have it, that we deserve what we've gotten, that we worked hard for the things that we have, no matter what society says, no matter what anyone else says. And as a result, our body will respond kindly. You give yourself grace, your body gives you grace right back. And so it brings your cortisol levels down, and it can reverse everything, that all the damage that has happened. Now, keep in mind, we have what's called a bell curve. Your body everything kind of goes up, and then it gets to a point where it goes beyond and you can't pull back. Yes, our body and our blood restriction from stress can cause damage, but the damage can be reversed if it's caught early enough, and if we do what's necessary to restructure the different parts of our body that are under attack, essentially. And the way you do that simply is by dedicated daily stress reduction. There are many different ways of doing that. One, again, be kind to yourself. Be careful what you say. Your body can't tell the difference between a bully, if that bully's someone else or if it's yourself. In fact, sometimes some of the mean things we say to ourselves, we would never accept from somebody else. But when we say it to ourselves, our body reacts just as if it's someone else. So being kind to yourself, having a daily form of some type of movement, preferably low impact movement that also helps reduce stress, that provides some sense of peace. It can be walking, it can be singing, and well, singing is an activity. I'll talk about that too. But walking, Pilates, yoga. Pilates is wonderful because it kills two birds with one stone. It gives you muscle and it gives you peace. And so movement of some kind. Building muscle is a really wonderful way of maximizing your health. It determines what happens to your body later and to your health later based on how much muscle you make now. Whatever muscle, wherever you are in life, the muscle you make will always make you later in life healthier. And so when you reduce your stress and you do muscle work, the fuel your muscles need, they get. When under stress, your muscles are fighting against a process where your body's trying to push that fuel towards fat. And so again, stress reduction helps in that process too. So you see how all of this is kind of connected, because there's no one system in our body that works on its own. It's all connected. And so our brain, being one of the kind of the control center of the body, when thoughts can affect our body and so on. And so again, I'm just going to repeat. So some ways to fix this: daily exercise, daily journaling, gratitude journaling. Prayer is a form of meditation. Meditation works. Depending on the severity, sometimes it requires medication, sometimes it requires therapy in order to reverse some of the stress that your body's under. Low impact exercise, eating well. Stress causes inflammation. High carbohydrate foods and simple carbohydrates like sugar and flour, white flour, white rice, all cause inflammation in the body also. And so trying to reverse that inflammation by eating leafy green vegetables as much as you can, drinking lots of water, getting enough sleep, managing your relationships, and creating boundaries around yourself so that people don't take advantage of you, because once they do, then that also causes more stress. Trying to manage the stress that is in your life. And so these are all things that we can do to reduce our stress. But the number one thing is be kind to yourself and tell yourself nice things. And imposter syndrome is not a nice thing to say about yourself. So again, I'm Dr. Catherine Toomer. I'm a family medicine and community health physician. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the connection between imposter syndrome and weight gain. It's one of those things we don't really think about much, but it's not just saying imposter syndrome. It's really anything you say to yourself that's unkind can actually cause your body to react in a way where it starts to try to make fat out of the food you eat. Who knew? So I'll see you next Tuesday. If you have questions, I can see them in the comments, so you can ask me questions before I go. And if you have topics that you'd like to talk about, please put them in the comments so that I can see them. And I will definitely get to them and try to, create more topics. I will be here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. live, preferably. And I will also have some guests on so we can have some experts on other things. So if there's anything you want to know about, I'll bring someone in. If I don't know about it, I'll bring someone in who does. So thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Ursuline, George, Sheila, Dee. And I see something that says Facebook user. Not sure who you are, but great connection made to weight gain. Whoever you are, thank you. And BJ Smith, thank you for coming. And Mona, thank you also for coming. So I'll see you next Tuesday, 6 o'clock, right here. Good night.